Go turn with me to John. We're going to be looking at John chapter 4. Beginning in the first verse, going through the 42nd verse. And we're going to do a careful verse-by-verse exposition of each word of that this evening. I hope you know Pat. John 4, beginning in verse 1. Now, we're going to kind of skip around a little bit. But we're going to look at a couple of words because I think they're important. In John 4, we see the story of the woman of the well, and it starts out with the Pharisees finding out that Jesus is baptizing not only more than they are, but more than John. Now, Jesus wasn't really baptizing so much as his disciples were, but they were baptizing a lot of people. Apparently, they had kind of an assembly line going, and they were baptizing, and people were being converted, and differences were being made in people's lives. The Pharisees weren't real happy about that, so they began to get upset. Jesus decides here in verse 3 to leave Judea and go to Galilee. Now, there was a difference in how you came from Galilee to Judea and how you went back from Galilee to Judea. Because the shortest way from Judea to Galilee was straight through Samaria. The shortest way from Judea to Galilee, from Galilee to Judea, you didn't go. Because the Samaritans wouldn't let you pass through Samaria to go from Galilee to Judea. But they would let you pass through to go from Judea to Galilee. After all, anybody who's going to Galilee, well, you know, they're tough. They've got they've got a hard life anyway. You might as well let them pass through. But the ones who are going to Judea, well, they've got money to spend. Let them go around. The Samaritans didn't like the Judeans. The Judeans didn't like the Samaritans. You've heard the story of the Good Samaritan? Yeah, well, these guys had it. There was no such thing. The only Good Samaritan, well, no, that doesn't even count even there. There was no such thing in the eyes of a good Jewish person, of a Good Samaritan. They were half-breeds. They were unfaithful. They had been the trash that the Babylonians hadn't bothered to exile, combined with the trash that they brought in to try to take away the land of the people of Israel. And so the good Jews who had gone through the exile, who were the upper crust, who were the elites, could not stand the Samaritans. And as often happens over a couple of centuries, the feeling became very quickly mutual. It's amazing how much when people don't like you, you tend not to like them back. That's exactly what happened here. As a matter of fact, there were prohibitions in the Talmud to prevent Jewish people from talking to Samaritans. Literally, they weren't allowed, a good Jewish man wasn't allowed to talk to. They were less than Gentiles. And you know how they felt about the Gentiles. And so Jesus was passing through Samaria to get back to Galilee. And he comes to the village of Sychar. It's a little village out there in the middle of Samaria. And the road's been long, and it's hot. I think we know something about hot. But it's also dry and dusty. And Jesus and his disciples are thirsty, they're hungry, they're tired, and they end up at the city well right around noon. And it's just about that time that this woman of Sychar, of Samaria, comes down to draw water. Now his disciples had gone into the city to buy food, and this woman comes down, and Jesus strikes up a conversation with her. Now, remember, the only thing worse in a good Jewish mind, as far as than the Samaritans were the Samaritan women, because they were not only Samaritan but they were women. And you didn't talk to a woman you weren't related to. That culture just prohibited that to begin with. And Jesus walks up and says, "Give me a drink." I want you to get the picture of this experience. He's dressed in all of his rabbinical finery. Not that he had a lot of it, but what he had, he was dressed as a rabbi coming back from Judah, from Jerusalem to Galilee. And he walks up to the Samaritan woman and strikes up a conversation. Now, I want to make sure that we understand what time of day it was, because it's important. Scripture says it was about the 6th hour. So about noon. Now tell me, if you were going to do some hard manual labor, would you prefer to do it, I don't know, in the morning, say around 7, 8 o'clock? Or would you prefer to do it at noon? Out in the middle of a dry, arid climate. It's very hot. It's very humid. And by the way, what you're trying to do is get water from the well. Would you prefer to do it in the early morning when it's cool, or would you prefer to do it in the middle of the day when it's hot? Yeah. So guess when all the women who came to draw water came to draw water? It wasn't at noon. They would come fill up their pots in the morning, and it was quite the social scene. They got a chance to talk and to laugh and to giggle, and they had a great time. So why was she there at noon? Apparently, this woman wasn't real accepted by her peers. In other words, the Samaritan women didn't think she was of high enough quality to be a part of their group, to be a part of their social network, to be friends on whatever they had, like Facebook. If they'd had Facebook, she wouldn't have had many friends. She didn't have many friends in real life. And so, here at noon, she's out there drawing water when nobody else will be there. Apparently, she had been married 5 times. We don't know what happened to those marriages, how they were dissolved. We don't know that they were dissolved. But she was living with a man who wasn't her husband. And in that day's society, that was heavily discouraged. Jesus walks up and he does something unconscionable. He begins a conversation. Why does Jesus begin a conversation with her? Because he saw the woman at the well. Because he saw not only who she was, not only her ethnicity, not only her gender, not only her history, not only her past or sin, but he saw the mark of God in the middle of her. He saw the image of God, fractured as it was, that was there in the middle, and he saw her potential. Jesus saw the woman at the well. And she had some questions for him. She starts off with, "Why are you talking to me? You know I'm a Samaritan woman. What's up? What's your deal?" Freely translated from the original Greek, of course. But not inaccurate. And he responds with something interesting. Jesus says, "If you knew who was asking you, you'd ask me for living water." Now, living water, that's a phrase we don't use very often except in church, right? How many of you have used that in a non-church related sense in the last, I don't know, year? Living water. I think it's important for us to understand what that word living there means in this context. Yes, there is a sense of that spiritual water which springs up from the inside of us. That's how we normally use it. And Jesus uses kind of a double play on the word because that's the sense in which he means this particular part of it. But she heard it in something totally different. She heard running water. Why? Because The word running, the concept of running water was not something that they had. They had a living water. I remember as a 16-year-old Boy Scout, we were hiking the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama, outside of Talladega, Alabama. We were hiking 50 miles. They took us in a van and dropped us off about 25 miles from base camp and said, walk back. It was fun. So we had 3 days between drop-off, well, 4 days between drop-off and retrieval of mountainous hiking, off-road trails and places like that, carrying full pack, everything on our backs. No, I would not do that again for everything it's worth. But it was fun at the time. But that first night, that first day, we walked hard, and my buddy and I, being somebody, had used most of one of our canteens and were on the second one. Both of us had carried 2 canteens with us. And we had used all of one and we're into the second. And we started asking, where do we get water? Base camp. We made about 8 miles today. We're about 17 miles from base camp. You want us to walk over there and get water so we can come back here? I don't think so. Well, that's the nearest water source that we know of. We may run over into something before then. Okay. And so we began to consider what our water usage had been and what we were going to do for supper. And we're walking around kind of exploring the area, and I hear something. I hear a little trickle, kind of like the sound of water running. Somebody left the bathtub running, I suppose. Now, it was out in the middle of the woods. But we did find, coming off of this rocky little crag, little bitty, just a little stream of trickling water. We watched it for a little while. We saw how the moss had grown, and it was filtering that water. We decided to chance it. We filled our canteens, and we headed back to base camp. Come back to that camp for the night. And when we got back to camp that night, everybody else was surprised that we had full canteens. Now, we'd been no more than about 200 yards exploring, but they were shocked that we had full canteens. Where did you get water? Oh, right up there. Did you find just like a pool of water? No, it was running water. One of the kids looked and said, "You mean like a faucet?" No, not like a faucet. It was a little stream, a little trickle of water. But it was enough volume to fill our canteens easily enough. Sure enough, it was good. It was good water. It had been filtered as it went over those rocks and crags and moss and through the sand, and it was pure, clean, great water. One of the leaders told us about 3 days later that when he'd heard of it and seen it, he'd hiked up to see where the water was coming from and found the stagnant pool that was leaking down the side of that mountain, and seen the algae and the growth on top of that, the stagnation that had built up on that pool. Because that pool wasn't living water. But as that water came down that mountain, over about 150, 200 yards, it came down that mountain and it went through that sand and it went through the rocks and it went through all the other things. And by the time it got to us, it was nice. That's what he means by living water. That water that's flowing, that water that's nice and has been purified by the sand and the rocks and the moss and coming down and that living water. Stuff that's good to drink. Now let me ask you a question. Where in Sychar do you find running water? You don't. There's a reason that they left them in Galilee, because it really wasn't worth a whole lot. When it comes to the land of milk and honey, they got kind of in between spot. But there is a well. There was a very deep well. That means the water table was low. The well ran, you had to have a long rope and a good bucket to get down to it. And you had to pull that water up. Now, how much does water weigh? How much does a pint of water weigh? A pound. A pint's a pound the whole world round. Y'all know that, right? So therefore, if you pull up a gallon bucket of water, how much are you pulling up? Huh? 4 pounds. Yeah. No. Excuse me, 8 pounds. 8 pounds. Sorry, did the math wrong. 8 pounds of water. So if you're filling up a 5-gallon bucket, you're pulling that up a lot of times. That was what she had every day that she went and did at noon. And Jesus offers her this place where you can go and get running water. And she says, give it to me because I'd love to have that. If you can find that around here, I'd love to have it. Because she even says that Jacob, who was their common ancestor, couldn't find that around here. He couldn't find the running water. Now every year at certain times, the wadis begin to fill and it floods that area. But this wasn't that time of year. It was one of those, either you have too much water or you don't have enough. That's why the well was important. Jesus looks at him and looks at her and says, I've got water you don't understand. I want to give you that soul water, that well that springs up to eternal life. He tells her to go call her husband. Now that was just plain meaning Jesus, wasn't it? Knowing good and well that she has 5 former husbands and the current one isn't a husband. That was just mean, wasn't it? But he says that to her in order to continue that conversation. Go call your husband and come here. She says, I have no husband. He says, I know. And he tells her the story. And things have gone from interesting to a little creepy for her. She's gone from, hey, why is this guy striking up a conversation? What's he want? To, he knows way more than I'm comfortable with him knowing at this point. And so she tries to change the story. She tries to change the conversation. In verse 19, she says, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. You know things that you're not supposed to know. Let's talk about religion now. It's amazing to me how people, when they hear that I'm a minister, will suddenly change the topic to religion. We could have been talking about something really nice and that just something slips out and they figure out that I'm a minister, and all of a sudden the conversation changes to religion. That's exactly what she tried to do, because that's a comfortable place. Here's the debate between your people and mine. Your people say we should worship in Jerusalem, but Jacob worshipped up here. Which one do you think is right? Which one does God say? And Jesus says something very interesting. He says, there will come that day when you won't worship in either, but you'll worship God in spirit. He teaches her that the external is not as important as the internal. The place is not as important as the attitude. The activity is not as important as the spirit. I want to kind of narrow in on verse 24 for a second. Read it with me. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. If you ever want to have a good conversation with your mormon friends, ask them about this verse. God is spirit. causes an interesting conversation. They'll try to tell you that it's mistranslated, or they don't know exactly what it means, or that it's a textual variation of some sort, that they don't know what that means. Let me suggest that you have that conversation next time you have an opportunity. John 4:24. He then does something that Jesus doesn't often do in John. He reveals who he is. He says to her, I am the one who speaks to you. When she says, we know the Messiah is coming. I'm here. The woman at the well went on to lead basically most of her village to come see Jesus. She called them and asked them to come see someone who's told me everything I've ever done, and who knows a lot more about me than I really am comfortable with, but I'm kind of comfortable with it. Come see. And they come out, and a little later in this chapter they say, we came out to see him because of you, but we've come to understand, we no longer believe because of you, we've come to see for ourselves. You see, Jesus saw the woman at the well. He saw her potential, despite everything else that was going on around her. He saw what she could be, not what she was. He saw what she had, the potential she had, not the past she carried. Jesus is like that. He invites us to lay our past at his feet so he can give us a future. He invites us to lay our buckets at his feet so he can fill them with living water. Jesus saw the woman at the well. Jesus saw you too. We're going to sing a hymn invitation here in a moment.